All right, this is my Zimmona and Dina list. She reads, whenever you cast your second spell each turn, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Sacrifice another creature, and you can draw a card, and then it's like if you have like 8 or more lands, you can place a land in play or something. Something like that. I showed it. I cut it off a bit too soon. We got Gutter Bones. He can come back if they lose life. Otherwise, he's a 2/1. Enters the battlefield tapped. Persistent Specimen is one of the skeleton buddies. You can pay mana, return him from your graveyard. I think he comes to the battlefield. Sanitarium Skeleton, you can pay 3, tap 3, 1 black and 2, and return him to your hand. He enters battlefield untapped. That's kind of special about him. Shambling Ghast, whenever he perishes, you choose 1 target creature opponent controls, gains -1/-1 until end of turn. Or you create a treasure token. Valentine, Dina the Vein, and Lisette, Dean of the Root. Valentine's part is Menace Lifelink, and then if a creature would perish on your opponent's side of the field, they get exiled instead, and then when a creature gets exiled, you can pay 2 and make a pest token, and then Dean is whenever you gain life, you can pay 1. If you do, you put a 1/1 counter on your entire team, and they gain trample until end of turn. They're both just really good cards. This card's just a straight-up value engine. I'll probably actually make a Golgari list based off of him. Both sides of them, because both sides of them kind of do basically the same thing. But Valentine is definitely one of the better 1-drops as far as creatures is concerned. He's got Menace and Lifelink. Like, he's just like prime for playing Voltron. You could even play a Voltron deck with him, just like playing off his one side. Got Haywire Might. This card's nuts. You can pay 1 green, exile it. It exiles target non-creature, artifact, or enchantment. This card's just excellent. Been playing it a lot in Historic. It just puts its weight in dividends. This card is just great. Just start playing it in your green decks. Jacob Hawken Inspector. You can draw a card, then exile a card from your hand face down, and then you may look at that card at any time, and when you do that, if you can pay 6 mana, it turns into Hawken's Insight, and basically Hawken's Insight, it exiles the top card of your library every turn, and you can cast a spell from free from Hawken's Insight. You can play it for free. It's actually a play effect, so play effects can't be counterspelled because they don't go on the stack. Rona, Herald of Invasion, when you cast a legendary spell, you may untap her, draw a card, then discard a card, and then she transforms into a Tolarian Obliterator. She basically works like Phyrexian Obliterator, except she like obliterates things from the hand. It's like whenever a creature deals damage, that creature controller exiles a card from their hand at random. If it's a land card, you may put it on the battlefield under your control. Otherwise, you may play it for free. Yeah, she's like kind of like a take on a Phyrexian Obliterator. Blood Artist. Whenever a Blood Artist, another creature perishes, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Resembling Skeleton. Turn Resembling Skeleton from the battlefield tap, or from graveyard to the battlefield tap. He's just like your classic skeleton buddy, always shows up. Slaughter Specialist. This card is really good. When enters the battlefield, you give your opponent a 1/1 human, and then whenever a creature dies on their opponent's side of the field, she gets a 1/1/1+ counter. She's just good. Like, honestly, she's just really good. And, like, any list that she goes in, I'm starting to really like her a lot. Tangle Colony is one of the newer cards from Eldraine. Can't block. And then when it perishes, you create X 1/1 black rat creature tokens, where X is the amount of damage it took. I kind of just put this in. This card is definitely better in, like, red. Because you can, like, you know, kind of pop it with, like, a red board wipe that, like, oh, it does 4 or 5 damage to all creatures. And then you get 4 or 5, 1/1 rat tokens, which is great. Ron Executioner Thane is like whenever 1 or more creatures on your control dies, or perishes, excuse me. Each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. That only triggers once per turn, though. So it's kind of like a lot of the, like a Blood Artist effect, except it's stronger in a nutshell, and he's got good stats. Because he's a 2/2 for 2, which is still pretty solid. Monster Dread Knight, this card is pretty awesome. You can draw a card and discard and lose 1 life with his Dread Whispers, Trample, and then when he is in the graveyard, when he gets sent to the graveyard, during the next turn that he's in that graveyard, you can play him with his adventures. You get like a one-time ability to bring him back into the adventure zone. He's one of those black, like, blade creatures that when they get sent to the graveyard, they can come back. Quirion Beastcaller gets a 1/1 counter whenever you cast creature spells, and then when she perishes, you can put all of her 1/1 counters on target creature. Voldar Valerian Desecrator. Draw a card, then discard a card. If you discard an instant or sorcery this way, each opponent loses 1 life, you gain 1 life. You can pay 2 and sacrifice her and then recast an instant or sorcery from your graveyard. You got to pay the mana cost for it. I might make like a weaker deck around her. Arcane Signet, it's a mana rock, creates mana of any colors your commander has. Rhystic Study, whenever your opponent casts spells, if they don't pay an extra 1, you draw a card. Bastion of Remembrance, it makes a 1/1 white human. And then whenever one of your creatures perishes, your opponents lose 1 life and you gain 1 life. Black Market Connections, you can pick 1 of 3 or all 3 or 2 of 3. Create a treasure token, lose 1 life. Draw a card, you lose 2 life. Create a 3/2, lose 3 life. This card is really good in a list that can really take advantage of the fact that, like, you can gain life back. This is when this card is excellent. It's probably like one of the strongest cards in the game once you can actually start gaining life with it consistently. However, in this list, we usually use it for its draw card. Callous Blood Mage is one of those cards that's got like 3 abilities, and they're all pretty solid. Enters battlefield, choose 1. You create a 1/1 pest that when it perishes, you gain 1 life. You draw a card and you lose 1 life, or exile target opponent's graveyard. This card's just good. Headless Rider, I don't even know really why this guy's in here. Whenever Headless Rider or another non-token zombie you control perishes, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. We kind of just put him in here because he's like 2 bodies by himself, and we got a few zombies coming up the way. Midnight Reaper, whenever a non-creature you control perishes, you draw a card and lose 1 life. This is a must ability, so be careful of that. This card is excellent, though. 3/2 that like draws you some extra cards, always great. Murderous Rider, pop target creature or planeswalker, you lose 2 life. Lifelink, whenever Murderous Rider dies, you put it in the bottom owner's library. For Phyrexian Arena, at the beginning of each upkeep, you draw an additional card and lose 1 life. Sedgemoor Witch has Menace, Ward, pay 3 life, and then whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you make a pest, which is the 1/1s that when they perish, they give you 1 life. Voracious Vermin enters the battlefield, you give him a rat, or you make yourself a rat, and then whenever one of your creatures dies, he gets a 1/1 counter, and those rats can't block. Kalina Ambush, target creature fights a target creature you don't control, otherwise it's a tapped green source. Glissa Sunslayer, this card's nuts. First strike, Death Touch, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you choose 1, draw a card, lose 1 life, pop target enchantment, or remove up to 3 counters from target permanent. Grakmaw, Skyclave Ravager, he basically has 2 lives. He enters the battlefield with X11 counters on it, which is 3 normally. But when he perishes, however many 1/1 counters he has, he leaves behind a Hydra that is that big. So he basically gets 2 lives. That's what I'm talking about. Network Terminal, add 1 mana of any color, tap another untapped artifact you control, draw a card, then discard a card. We play it for the discarded card effect, but it is a mana rock. Vial of Galadriel, if you would draw a card while you have less than like 1 in hand, you draw 2 instead. And then if you would gain life while you have less than 5, you gave twice that much life instead, and it's a mana rock. So it kind of like really can cover you when you're down and out, basically. Replicating Ring is a mana rock, and then it gains night counters. Once it hits 8 night counters, you make 8 of them. Skyclave Relic is a mana rock. It's indestructible, and you can kick it, and then you get 3 mana rocks instead that are all indestructible. But they come into play tapped, so be careful. Celestis, it's when it's either day or night, becomes day when it enters the battlefield. It's a whole day and night mechanic. Basically, we're playing this because it can draw and discard as the card. Because you can shift it from day and night, and then when that happens, you draw and discard a card and gain 1 life. We're playing it for the draw discard stuff. The day and night does not matter. God Eternal Kefnet has flying, and then at the start of your turns, you can reveal the top card of your library. You may, and if it's a instant or sorcery, you can cast a copy of it, except the copy costs 2 less. And you put the instant or sorcery in your hand, and you make like a copy of it on the stack, and it costs 2 less. And then when he dies or is exiled, he can be placed in the library 3rd from the top. Inga Rune Eyes, I love this card. When she enters battlefield, scry 3. Whenever Inga Rune Eyes perishes, draw 3 cards if 3 other creatures perished with her. Kuama's Awakening has Ascend. At the beginning of each upkeep, each player draws a card. If you ascend and have the City's Blessing, only you draw the extra card. Grave Pack is whenever one of your creatures perishes, each opponent sacrifices a creature. So, and that's each creature too. So that's not just like Like even during board wipes and stuff like that, or like multiple times of your creatures perishing, you can get rid of a lot of their stuff. Guardian Project reads whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield and if does not have the same name of a card in your graveyard, you draw a card. And basically in Brawl, that means whenever you cast a non-token creature, you draw a card. That's basically what that means in Brawl, because it's a singleton format. Toski can't be countered, indestructible whenever your creatures make contact with a player. Combat damage wise, they draw a card. Poison Tipped Archer, this is an old favorite of mine, has Reach Death Touch. Whenever another creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life. This card's just excellent. He can really like bring on the pain and cause like a lot of damage because it's a drain effect. And remember, you really can't stop drain effects. So, Somnus in the Lacrum enters battlefield. You may search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped in the shuffle. And then whenever he perishes, you may draw a card. Yeah, so Somnus in the Lacrum is just a solid card. Patient Rebuilding. At the beginning of your upkeep, target opponent mills 3 cards, then you draw a card for each land put in the graveyard this way. This card is just a really cool like draw mill card. Junji in the Midnight Sky, I love this dragon. It has Flying Menace. Then when he perishes, you choose one. You can put up a target non-dragon creature from a graveyard onto your battlefield. You lose 2 life, or your target opponent discards 2 cards and they lose 2 life. So this card's just fun. I like him a lot. He's one of my favorite just like creatures in general. I love his art too. So you'll probably see Junji in a lot of lists. Massacre Girl has Menace. When she enters the battlefield, each other creature gets -1 until end of turn. And then if a creature perishes, she does that effect again. So she's kind of effectively a board wipe, but you got to kind of start off with like a 1/1, and it kind of starts the chain going. Especially if you got like 2 or 3 1/1s, then she board wipes the entire board and you're left with a 4/4 Menace, which is pretty good. Ogre Slumlord, whenever a non-token creature dies, you create a 1/1 black rat creature token, and he gives rats too. God Eternal Ronus, when he enters the battlefield, you double your creature's powers and toughness until end of turn, and he gives them vigilance. And then he's got the Eternal effect that when he perishes or put in the exile, you can put him back on the top of your deck. Gutter Grime, I felt like playing this whenever a token creature you control dies, you put a slime counter on it. Then you create a green slime token, which is as big as the amount of slime or gutter tokens or whatever the counters on it. However many counters on it, you create a slime token that is that big. Cur of the Midnight Sky, or the Boundless Sky, Flying Death Touch. When it dies, you choose one. You search up 3 lands, put them in your hand, place them into your hand, and then shuffle your library. And then, or you create an XX Spirit where it's as big as the amount of lands you control. Workshop Warchief has Trample. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. Whenever Workshop Warchief perishes, you create a 4/4 Green Rhino creature token, and he's got Blitz. This card is very akin to Thragtusk. If you know what that card does, this is kind of like the retrained version of him, where he makes you a bigger guy, but he gets you less life. And Blitz means that he enters the battlefield with haste, but then you sacrifice him at the end of the turn, and then whenever he's removed from the battlefield, you draw a card. The Scarab God, at the beginning of each upkeep, each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is the number of zombies you control. You can make 4, 2 and 2 Demir. You can exile target creature card from a graveyard, and then you turn into a 4/4 zombie on your side of the board. Molder Vine Reclamation, whenever a creature you control perishes, you gain 1 life and draw a card. This card's cool because it counts tokens. It's a bit expensive at 5 mana, but it's strong. I think this card's very strong. If it hangs out long enough, it's definitely worth it because you'll be drawing a boatload of cards off of it. Karya, the Swirling Sky, has Flying in Ward 2. Then when she perishes, you choose 1. You mill the top 6 cards of your library, and you can return 2 instants or sorceries from your graveyard to your hand. And then she can bounce up to 6 mana worth of permanents. So she can bounce like an entire board of tokens and then like 6 mana of non-land permanents. So you could do like all tokens and then like a 4 mana creature and a 2 mana mana rock or something. It's just an example. I like all the Kamigawa dragons. I wish we had the old ones in this game because I'd play them too. Liliana Dreadhorde General. Whenever a creature you control perishes, you draw a card. She can create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures for a -4. Each opponent chooses a permanent that they control that has a super type of a card that they have, and then they sacrifice the rest. Remember, super types: lands, creatures, enchantments, etc. Gruff Triplets, Trample. When it enters battlefield, if it's not a token, you create or 2 token copies of it that are 3/3s. And then when each one of them perishes, they give counters to the one that's still alive. So eventually he's like, you play him, you get 3 3/3s, and then eventually it's like 2 6/6s. And then when the last one perishes and the other one's still around, it's a 12/12. So he's just a boatload of value. Like, that card's like crazy amounts of value. Groot Kirk's Huntsman. Create 2/2 black and green wolf creature tokens that when they perish, each Garruk you control gains a loyalty counter. He can axe a creature, pop target creature, draw a card, and then you get an emblem. Creatures you control get 3/3 and have trample. His emblem's really easy to get off. We play him mostly just because he's just kind of good. He's just a solid planeswalker. Immortal Sun. Players can't activate planeswalker loyalty abilities at the beginning of each draw step. We draw an additional cards. Spells cost 1 less to cast. Creatures you control get 1/1. This is like one of my favorite cards in the game. Like, you get Immortal Sun to stick, you're just feeling good. Wormcoil Engine. I felt like playing this. This card, I think, has been power crept like crazy. You got billions of better options. So it has Death Touch, Lifelink, and then when he perishes, you create 1 3/3 with Death Touch and then another 3/3 with Lifelink. So like I said, the good thing about this card still is it's a colorless card, so it's very easy to cast, but it's been power crept like crazy. Great Henge. It costs 1 less for each, like, for the greatest power on your side of the board. So if you have like a 6/6, hypothetically, it only costs 3 mana. You can tap it for 2 green mana and gain 2 life. And then whenever a non-token creature you control enters the battlefield, you put a 1/1 counter on it and draw a card. All right, this first match is against Pandenberg. They're playing Muldrotha the Gravetide. We lose this one. Muldrotha is a graveyard commander. She's a 6/6 elemental that's Sultai, so she's green, black, and blue. And once per turn, you can cast one of each card's super type from your graveyard. That's a permanent. So most permanents are enchantments, creatures, artifacts, lands, and battles. She could actually cast battles too. I don't know if she's implemented in the game to do that, but she could definitely cast battles. So they start off strong. They got their mana rock down on turn 3, which they want because, like I said, this is mostly a big mana deck. We get a mana rock down as well. Network Terminal. We play our Gutter Bones. He's a 2/1, and the way he comes back from the graveyard is you have to deal damage to your opponent. If he sees some damage is done to the opponent, you can pay 2, and he'll crawl back into your hand. So, all right, the 5 mana. They got 2 black sources, a blue source, and a green source. Green and black, and a blue and black. So they're good on black mana. They're currently sitting at 5 black mana, including their mana rock, because their mana rock taps for 1 of anything. I'm going to play Guardian Project here. Comes down successfully. We're not going to swing Gutter Bones into a 1/4 because he'll just get 8 up. When you swing a creature where it's just purposely going to die and lose the combat, it's called getting 8. So they play their Glissa here. Giraffe gives them flying. Gives Glissa flying. We take 1 here. We immediately snap down we snap down and go ahead and stab Horse the Glissa. We probably would have been better off taking off the Giraffe, to be quite honest. Because in the long run, it kind of matters because he gives zombies flying. And I think that's kind of a sub-theme with their deck, as it is a zombie tribal. Because once they get Muldrotha down, they can keep recasting guys and stuff from their graveyard. Mind you, you do have to pay the mana cost. Muldrotha is a very fair card. She's strong, but she's fair. I like her a lot. This is where it kind of starts to go downhill for us, because we start kind of like not getting as much card advantage as we'd like. Go ahead and dig out the basic land first. It auto-triggered it for us. That's the correct way to do it. You want to grab the basic land before you draw, because you don't want to just draw another land. I mean, maybe sometimes you might want to draw another land, but you'd rather not draw another basic. We're kind of looking through our deck, figuring out what we can do, because Muldrotha requires a pretty healthy amount of graveyard removal to really put the deck down. Go ahead and draw another land here in Command Tower, which is excellent because that means we got one of every color because we're Sultai as well, which again is green, black, and blue. So they play Glissa again. This is where we probably would have been better off taking out Giraffe, but it's Muldrotha, so to really beat a Muldrotha deck, you gotta exile their graveyard. Either a lot, like do a few mass exiles, or have a guy or two, some sort of card that's like consistently exiling cards in the graveyard. Kind of leave them with no options. They play Open the Graves here. I love that card. Yeah, it's definitely a zombie tribal though. Open the Graves reads when a non-creature you control perishes, non-token creature. You create a 2/2 black zombie, and it's for every single one of them. It's 5 mana. The card's kind of a bit expensive, but it's a cool card and it's fair. I like it a lot. Play Junji here, because the thing with Glissa is she requires removal to deal with. Go ahead and play Junji, and then we play Varan, and we keep drawing because we're playing Guardian Project. That's why you play Guardian Project, because in Brawl, it's basically cast a creature, draw a card. It is essentially pretty much how it reads in Brawl. You'll get a boatload of cards. It's one of the best draw options in green, period. Not so much in Constructed. Like, you can kind of make it work in Constructed, too, if you're playing, like, a deck that's, like, mostly, like, 2-ofs of stuff. So, more often than not, you're drawing cards. We're thinking here. We bring back our Solemn Simulacrum so we can gain more lands. We're trying to get some mana advantage and kind of soft drawing through our deck to find a board wipe, because we have a few. Or actually, I think in this list we don't, actually. This list I kind of threw together in a bit of haste, so it's not as well formatted as a lot of our lists. And Slash, it's kind of really proactive. It really kind of goes all in on our commander. Which, if I were to remake this list, I would definitely not do that, because you usually just don't want to do that with your list anyways. Probably the next strong deck that I make, actually, as of the recording of this video, which is December 12th. So probably the next time I play Magic will probably be again on Sunday. I might play it beforehand. I'm probably going to just play it on Sunday, though, because we're probably going to do, like, start incorporating more Halo Wars 2. I'm probably going to do Empire War again, too. So stick around for that. But back to the Magic video before I go off on a tangent. We're kind of feverishly trying to dig through our deck to find some answers for the flyers and stuff. We don't really have too many, in the sense that, like, we didn't really pack that much removal. Like I said, this deck is incredibly proactive with what our commander is doing, which isn't bad, but it's just in a situation like this where they end up getting ahead of you, that's when it's problematic. Where they're like, oh, well, they got something that's better than what we currently have, so we need to remove it. That's when it's problematic. So I can definitely do a revamped version of this list and kind of show you what's what. But there is an advantage of this deck being as proactive as it is, and one of the next matches you'll see why that's a good thing. They play Imprison in the Moon. That's a really, really good removal. I keep forgetting about that card existing, but that card is like one of the best blue removals ever. It basically turns a creature into a colorless land, which the colorless land super type is called Wastes. Is what it's called. We're thinking we have to just block the Midnight Rider thing, because they're going to pop Rhystic Study anyways, and they keep paying for it because they have enough mana for it, so it doesn't matter anymore. Rhystic Study is only really super great when it's early, or you're going against a deck that's kind of constantly what's called storming off, where they're playing a lot of spells constantly. Yeah, they make 2 zombies there, one from the Headless Rider and then one from Open the Graves. So this is like a zombie deck at its finest. Big addition to the green zombie is Glissa Sunslayer, because she herself is probably like the strongest zombie that we have in the game. Like, for real. Like, she's really, really strong. We go ahead and play Murderous Rider here. kind of feverishly digging for something to do here because they're getting ahead of us. It's the lack of, like I said, the lack of removal is what kind of screwed us over this match. Is the fact that we don't have any sort of interaction. We're very proactive. And when you get into 3 colors, like, your deck room starts to be a bit more tight because you get a lot more options to be proactive. Like, honestly, with Zimmona and Dina, like, she could probably drop the blue and be all right. She's blue because Zimmona, the original Zimmona, is a Simic card. She's a Simic card. But you could play the original in this list. She's actually pretty solid, honestly. Go ahead and send 2 dudes their way. We're feeling fine because we got Bastion of Remembrance. So, actually here, they're actually kind of cause themselves some problems. Because then they're going to have to sacrifice here. We want our creatures to perish in this list because we have a lot of those types of effects with Bastion of Remembrance, Vran, and our commander itself. Because we can draw creatures, or draw cards off of using the sacrifice effect. We go ahead and return Gutterbones to our hand. But the really big problem here is the Giraffe giving Glissa flying. That's why this is like the true zombies list, because you get green, which... You get Glissa. There's another decent zombie in Molder Hulk in green. He's a fungus zombie. He's big, but he can cost less for the amount of creatures in your graveyard, and he helps you bring back lands to from the graveyard to your hand. And that is usually pretty good. And then there's another one that's a pretty decent zombie too. It's from like Zendikar. He can get like 1/1 counters is basically what he does. So he's pretty decent. Like I said, the green doesn't really add too many zombies, though. It's not like you're missing out on much. It's mostly Glissa that you want to be paying attention of, and Molder Hulk, I think, is also an excellent choice, too. Because he's big, too. He's a 6/6. Fortunately, I don't think he has any keywords, which kind of stinks, but he is big, and he can bring himself back sometimes, too. I think there's a way he can bring himself back. He's a cool little card, too, though. But the green doesn't add that much. It just adds the fact that you're playing green, which is probably arguably the most powerful color is green. And Magic, it probably goes green, white, blue, black, red. Because I'd say white's probably stronger than black nowadays. White's got a lot of good stuff going for it. Go ahead and play Moldervine here. There's a few options in our deck. If we would have drawn into them, we probably would have been all right. But like I said, this deck is very all in on what we're trying to do. So I'm thinking here, they're thinking about blocks. Math is for blockers. Math is for blockers. But yeah, the next week deck I do, I'm going to probably do it off that Dimir commander I showed you here. That it returns instants and sorceries from the graveyard, and you can you can pitch them to drain them for 1. We draw 2 cards here because of Moldervine. They get 2 zombies because of Open the Graves. Open the Graves is an excellent little rare. I think I might play that in that one chick's list because it's a really reasonable card. If somebody doesn't want to play against Open the Graves, then they probably shouldn't be playing Magic because it's about as fair as it gets. Honestly, it really is. Open the Graves is a very reasonable card. So. But yeah, so they keep redeveloping their board here. We're not doing so hot over here. They're just they're getting ahead of us. This is towards the end of the game. So like I said, this was a bit of a longer one. We ended up losing this one. The fact is our deck wasn't just wasn't manufactured to deal with what they're doing. It is pretty cool though. I think it was a really refreshing match because they are playing Muldrotha and they're playing zombies. So they're actually playing a theme. So That's what I don't mind about losing to this. It's not like they're just playing Muldrotha to play like a good stuff pile dot list with every best card in the game in it type deal. Because zombies aren't really that good, honestly. They got some stuff once they get set up. They're very combo-y where once the zombie deck gets set up, they can do a lot of stuff, and they're actually a pretty decent creature type, but they're an old creature type, so they're fair. It's not like they're doing like stuff like dinosaurs or like one member of a zombie is like so powerful in a nutshell. It's not even fair. There's a little bit of that like with Glissa, but that's probably about the only one. And good game, opponent. All right, this one's a win. This one's pretty short. This one's flipped. We're up against Gadia, Font of Hope, which is an Angels list, mono white Angels. You know them, you love them. I love mono white Angels. Angels is actually my favorite creature type in the game. So, gotta play some Abzan Angels sometime. We only really got Nethoria as like a Abzan commander I actually like. I might play a Thalia Angels list, the Thalia and Geetrog monster. Play like an Azorius or an Abzan good stuff list, because Abzan is green, white, and black. Then you get like all the angels pretty much. I could play Teamer Angels too, because then we get Aurelias. So I might actually make a Teamer Angels list. Go ahead and swing in, send in Slaughter Specialist. I think you should start adding Slaughter Specialists to your list. If you got a free rare wild card, you play a lot of Brawl. I don't think you'll ever be disappointed with the card. It's an excellent card. They go ahead and play their Angel. It gets a 1/1 counter because of Gadia. Go ahead and play or wait, no, he doesn't boost toughness. I forgot he doesn't boost toughness. He only boosts attack. And he gives them vigilance. We play God Eternal Ronus here. Chunk him for 9 damage. That hit him pretty hard. So, like I said, they just kind of been back on the back foot. An Angel of the Eternal Dawn, that card's awesome. That card shuts off a ramp, basically, is basically what it does. They send their 2 Angels our direction, dealing 5. Down to 18. Go ahead and drop that down. Blood Artist. Send just God Eternal. They block with the human that we gave him with Slaughter Specialist. Blood Artist drains them for 1. Slaughter Specialist gets a 1/1 counter. We're sitting here thinking. We got for us. They send their team our way. Dealing 10 in the air because they got, 9. 2, 3, and 4. That's 9. That Angel activates because you can't play cards with greater mana cost than the number of turns that passed. That's how she stops ramp. I'm going to play the Solemn Simulacrum here. Attempt to, at least. Opponent might have a response. They're thinking, digging through their hand. Kind of hovering over the gear. They Teferi's Protection. We go ahead and do the Shambling Gas thing quick. Because we want them to lose life. And we want to gain life, too. We create the treasure token here. We decline to put the land down because we're going to use it for its bounce effect. Drain them for 2. Because we're getting another land this turn anyways because of Solemn. Grab out a basic, fish out a basic land. Grab a green source. Play Sanitarium Skeleton. There's no reason to attack. They're under Teferi's Protection. Say go. Then we're sitting here. They're looking. It's their turn. What do they got for us? And we're waiting on them. They're looking through their hand. They're trying to figure out what they want to do. Match is almost over here, by the way. Play Faceless Agent. It seeks a creature of the greatest, most prevalent creature type in your deck, so it peels out a random angel for him. It's a 2/2. It's an arena-only card. Here they just quit. Good game, opponent. Well played. All right, this one's a win as well. We're up against Bro Sidon. They're playing Emery, Lurker in the Lock. This is an artifact commander is what she does. She can like recast artifacts, and she costs less for artifacts too, so she can kind of like ignore her command zone costs as long as you got enough artifacts out. We end up winning here. Start with Haywire Might. Very good card against this deck because we can get rid of a key artifact. Mostly for the low amount of removal that we have in the deck, we'd want to wait for a Paradox Engine usually. In this match, we don't, but typically that's probably what you'd be looking for. That's why you want to run at least usually about every good deck runs probably about at least 15 removal options. You want to be able to deal with what your opponent's doing because you're going to end up dealing with like combos and stuff that where if you don't remove them, they win the game on the spot. Like there is no more game after that. You just lose. So any good deck will usually run about 15 forms of removal. This card's pretty sweet. She can untap another target permanent, and then she can untap 2 target legendary creatures, which is actually pretty nice. Nice and strong effect. She's a human cleric, and she's an uncommon. So that's ripe for abuse. A lot of those untapped permanent effects, that's why they're pretty rare, is because they're really, really easy to break. Go ahead and plot down some guys. She's a pretty good blocker, too, as a 1/4 for 3. We're kind of waiting here, figuring out what they want to do. They're taking a look at our cards. So, because if they untap another target permanent, that's why they're playing that chick, because they can definitely break that wide open. Because even here, they can untap a land. So I could say, I could even see this chick kind of just going into a blue deck, just because she's just kind of good. Honestly, untapping one of your mana rocks, maybe, so you can have an extra land. She's kind of like a pseudo form of ramp. Because untapping another target permanent, that counts lands too. So you can reuse the land. So that's ramp. We'll play the Thriving here. Declare it as a green source. We go ahead and exile the Casmuna's Transformation. Gain 3, ping him for 1, or drain him for 1. Gets rid of the Casmunas. We don't attack because we want to keep like the cards flowing. So if we lose guys, then at least we're like drawing cards. That's why we got rid of the Casmuna's Transformation. If you don't know what Casmuna's Transformation does, it just turns the creature it's equipped to into a 1/1 frog. So it basically turns it into a nothing. Blue gets plenty of removal like that. It's kind of like deals with it, but not quite. Removal is what it's called. Go ahead and play Dina here. Attempt to. They may be holding up a counter spell. She hits the board. We're good. Go ahead and play Glissa Sunslayer there. We kept missing because it is pretty late at night. We'll see if she comes down. She's pretty hard for this deck to deal with. I think they're going to opt to counter her now. Or they do something here. They untap the Dinana rock. And they... Yep, Archmage's Charm, so they counter the target spell. They left themselves wide open, so we just send the team. We keep the human back because it's kind of whatever. We're not going to draw cards off of him. We're just going to drain. So we'll keep him for our Commander Sacrifice effect. It'll be much more valuable in the long run. They play Trophy Mage. They can search up an artifact with mana value 3 or less. Or no, with a mana value of exactly 3. Reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. Yeah, it has to be 3, so... Because if it was 3 or less, it'd probably be too good. The thing is with artifacts is they've been traditionally really powerful decks. They're usually what's called a Tron deck, is basically you just play a bunch of artifacts, and then the deck like has cards that like, oh, well, you have so many artifacts out, now I'm just completely busted. Some of them are as simple as something like Mirror Enforcer, which is just a 4/4 for 0. Once you have enough artifacts out, which is pretty crazy, or it's something as complex as maybe like a Paradox Engine combo, which basically you just get like an unlimited turn. Like your turn doesn't end because you can constantly do stuff. Like I said, we sacrificed our human here because it proved to be more useful in the long run. Then we satisfied our second draw so we can drain them for 2. Go ahead and attempt to play Sanitarium Skeleton here. You'll see this is where the proactiveness of our deck favors us in this matchup, because we can go ahead and just keep doing our thing constantly, because we got all the skeleton buddies and stuff, because we got like how many skeletons, and because we have all those skeletons, they just give us free sacrifice fodder. That's what makes them good. They're sitting here looking at their hand, thinking, contemplating on what they want to do. So they're going, they're thinking. Don't really know what else to say. Play Quenwa's Awakening. Remember, that draws extra cards per turn, so that automatically satisfies our commander's second draw effect. But it draws everybody a card until we get the City's Blessing. But we have the City's Blessing. It's that little token with the building on it. What the City's Blessing does is, once you have 10 permanents, you gain the City's Blessing. And you can't lose it once you get it. Once you have the City's Blessing, you have it forever. It's the Ascend mechanic. It's from the first Ixalan set. So we're just going to draw an extra card per turn. I like Quenwa's Awakening. It's only 4 mana. And a lot of those effects are like, they're kind of like situational at 4 mana. And it's guaranteed extra cards. So we're thinking here, hopefully this doesn't get countered here. That's what we're thinking. But he doesn't. Vran doesn't get countered, which is really, really good. And now we're off to the races. We're cooking with gas over here. We're actually going to wait and do that on their turn, because Dinana's effect, we could do it on their turn. Most creatures' abilities are instant speed, which means you can do it on your opponent's turn when you have priority. Because basically in the background of like any sort of Magic game in general, you have what's called priority, and priority is when players can make actions. So when it's your turn, you always have priority. The way priority works is when it's your turn, you have priority. Then you do something, or you stop to not do something. Like you're like, okay, I'm going to transition a phase, and I'm going to go from main phase to battle phase. And that's when priority passes to your opponent. That's their chance to do something. So that's what's going on in the background, basically, of every Magic game is priority. So that's for any of you viewers out there that don't quite understand. Like when I say, oh, it can be done at instant speed, when it's your opponent's turn, they act first. And here we go ahead and use Dinana's effect, sacrifice our Sanitarium Skeleton. So Vran triggers, because he only triggers once per turn. And we get to draw a card, because Dinana's effect draws us a card. And because we have Murderous Rider out, we actually draw 2 cards, which satisfies her effect. We can put the land onto the battlefield. So I think it's once you get 8 or more lands, you repeat the draw process once. That's why it matters to do that stuff on our opponent's turn. And like I said, that's why it matters to keep our effects going on their turn. That's why the proactiveness does actually benefit us in some sort of way with this deck. We have to do Jacob Hawken here, because once that thing gets tapped down by that braided net card, I'm pretty sure it loses all abilities. And we exile a card. We go ahead and exile our Worm Coil Engine, pay 6, so we flipped Jacob Hawken's Insight. and we opt to do the effect of Dina now. We're doing a bunch of stuff, getting a bunch of triggers. We look to see if the -1/-1 can kind of do anything. We -1/-1 the chick, so she's not a free blocker for Midnight Rider. Because Midnight Rider will trade with everything that they have. Besides, it would bowl over their commander, and it would trade with everything else besides her. They would just bounce off of each other. So, and they're attempting to do Braided Net again because it only gets like 3 counters. I got one of those recently, so I'll have to put it in the new Hilda deck, the new version of the deck, because Hilda's not really that good. Because she, then you draw again. You can do it again once you hit 8 lands. Because this commander is actually quite powerful, honestly, and it's in its own right. Like it's dirtily, and it doesn't do much by itself. But if you get in the position where it's allowed to shine, it can actually impress you quite a bit. So, anyways, they're down to 4, so they get pretty much like one more turn. As long as if they don't interact with us in any way, they got like literally one more turn. Because not only do we have like Worm Coil down to just start bashing face, we got enough drain and pain effects to where Dina will activate, draining them for 2. Thrawn will activate, draining them for 2, which that automatically wins us that game right there. And Bastion of Remembrance will drain them for 1. So that's 5 total. They got River's Rebuke in hand, which is a day late and $1 short because that would bounce our entire board. They target us and bounce our entire board. Hawkins Insight triggers first because the way layers work in the game, which we just opt to sacrifice our Worm Coil because they're going to tap it down. It doesn't matter because we're winning right now anyways. So this is a good game. This is, like I said, this proves why sometimes a proactive list can be in your favor. So just being able to do all the things you want to be doing constantly. All right, there's the plugs and a green mug. So that's my dog, and you have a wonderful day. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.